Also be here to answer any questions and include that time in the webinar. So as we get started, I'll just introduce myself briefly. My name is Rael Carver. I'm the program leader for the Rural Grocery Initiative, and we are one of the implementing partners on the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. We're excited to share a little bit about our new pre-development technical assistance grant program. And I'm going to walk through some of the background. But before I do that, a couple housekeeping reminders. Please keep yourself on mute while we're going through our presentation. And then if you have questions along the way, either put those in the chat or we'll get to a point where you can unmute yourself and ask. We will be monitoring the chat and we'll have someone help facilitate those questions towards the end of the hour when we've set aside some time for that. So with that, I think those are the housekeeping items to share. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So a bit of background here, the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative is a program that aims to increase access to affordable, healthy food to improve the health and economic development of Kansans and their communities. We do this by providing technical assistance and financing through loans and grants. There are 5 partners that come together to implement this program. The Kansas Health Foundation has been our primary funder since the beginning in 2017 and continues to serve as a thought partner on this program. The Rural Grocery Initiative is a main technical assistance provider. We also facilitate much of the marketing and outreach and promotion for the program and facilitate potential or prospective projects and help usher them through our process. Network Kansas and IFF are our financial partners, and depending on the size of a project dictates which financial partner a project with Kansas Healthy Food Initiative would be working with most closely. And then the Food Trust is our evaluation partner. Next. So the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative supports new or expanded healthy food retail in underserved and low resource communities throughout Kansas. So this can be urban or rural. The focus is that on healthy food retail, and we need to see that there's an identified need and that the program fits our programmatic goals and eligibility criteria. Which we'll talk through in a little bit. So since 2017, when this program first started, we have funded 74 projects in 45 counties, totaling over $5 million in loans and grants towards healthy food retail projects in the state. And that has equated to over 16 million in leveraged funds, over 220,000 in expanded or retained square footage. So we've really had immense impact in the food retail landscape in Kansas since starting in 2017. And on the next slide, you can see an example of some of our funded projects. And you can also find this link or find this list of funded projects on our website at kansashealthyfood.org/funded projects. You'll notice that it spans all different aspects of the food retail landscape. So obviously some brick and mortar stores, but we also have supported producers that are wanting to get into healthy food retail outlets, as well as mobile markets. And so we really try to support that whole spectrum of the supply chain of healthy food retail. Because of our experience in this program, we've noticed that there is a gap in some of the funding resources available to early stages of development, so mainly startup or pre-development efforts, things like market studies or feasibility studies or even architectural renderings for a store design. And so in 2024, we applied to and received funding from the Reinvestment Fund to expand and enhance some of the offerings that we provide so that we could support that pre-development phase in a healthy food retail project. And that's what we're going to spend the most of our time on here today. If you have specific questions about the loan grant funding program, we may have time to get to those at the end during our question and answer session. But we also will be happy to point you to information to learn more. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Erica Blair, to walk us through the new pre-development TA grant program.
Great. Thank you, Ryle. Yes, well, as Ryle just said, the pre-development work, the planning, early concept work can be a pretty big part of a expansion of a project or establishing a brand new project. So we are excited to be able to offer these pre-development technical assistance grants through the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. This is a new grant program that we have not offered before. So what we wanted to do today is just kind of walk through some of the basics. I'll provide an overview, and then we'll just kind of walk through the guidelines step by step. And if you have questions about this program, we'll have time to answer those questions at the end. So again, this program, it's a new program. It is geared toward increasing healthy food access at the retail level in low resource and underserved areas of Kansas. So this is, projects like grocery stores, farmers markets, establishments that are selling groceries. So this is not talking about restaurants or food pantries. We really want to make sure that this is supporting healthy food access at the retail level. And we'll talk about that in more detail. This is again for early concept planning and pre-development stages. So we're not necessarily talking about equipment here. We're not talking about construction. We're talking about those quote unquote soft costs that don't necessarily have a physical component to them. This program is available because we received a grant from the Reinvestment Fund, the KHFI Partnerships Program. And so over the next 3 years, we will have $600,000 available for the pre-development technical assistance grants. In 2025, $200,000 will be available for this grant program. And we expect that awards will typically range between $5,000 to $40,000. So that can kind of give you an idea of what we expect to see in the grant applications. If someone can make a really strong case for why more funding is needed, we would consider that. But this is the typical range that we're expecting to see. And then I also wanted to just reiterate that this is a competitive grant application. So some of you may be familiar with some of the other Kansas Healthy Food Initiative programs, the Loan and Grant Mix program, for instance, that Ryle mentioned. Those applications are accepted on a rolling basis, and they're not, that there's no competition between projects for those funds. Whereas in this case, we will be looking at your grant applications and scoring them, and the projects that receive higher scores will be the projects that are funded. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for everybody as well. So with that, I really very strongly encourage everybody to look through the program guidelines in detail so that you can really see what are the eligibility criteria, what types of projects are eligible for funding, what are the application questions. You can find all of that at the link here. I think we can put this link in the chat as well, kansashealthyfood.org/program details/assistance. You can find all the information there. But now I'm going to just walk through those guidelines, like I said, step by step. And if questions come up as I'm going through each section, put them in the chat and we'll talk about your questions at the end. So what projects are eligible for the pre-development technical assistance grants? As I said, these projects must expand healthy food offerings at the retail level, and those retail outlets must accept, or they must plan to accept SNAP, or it needs to be a project that is getting healthy food into a retail outlet that accepts SNAP. So for instance, a grocery store could be eligible. That could be an eligible project. Farmers markets. Maybe there's an idea to start a distribution company. Obviously, that distribution company isn't going to be accepting SNAP, but they might be selling their product to a grocery store that accepts SNAP. We could be talking about food hubs here that aggregate product and then get that product out to retail outlets. So these are the types of projects that we're talking about here for the pre-development technical assistance grants. There's a wide range of eligible entities for these grants. So it could be a brand new business that hasn't incorporated yet. It could be an existing business. It could be an LLC, a sole proprietor, a cooperative. The ownership model doesn't really make a difference here. We could be receiving applications from new organizations or existing organizations. So a nonprofit, let's say, that's interested in opening a nonprofit grocery store, that could be an eligible entity. City or county governments, tribal governments, food policy councils. So there's really a wide range of potential entities that can apply for this funding. And then projects must be located in low resource and underserved areas of Kansas. So low resource is looking more at the economic conditions of the community, the income of the community. Underserved is talking more about what does the existing food access landscape look like? Are there already grocery stores in the vicinity? Do people have access to food already? So we look at a variety of criteria to determine if the project is in a low resource and underserved area. It can be in an urban area, it can be in a rural area. And if you want to check your potential eligibility for this program, you can go to this link. This is so investinginfood.com/eligibility. That is the Reinvestment Fund's website. And again, Reinvestment Fund is the funder of this program. So they have their own grants and they have their own eligibility criteria. The Kansas Healthy Food Initiative eligibility criteria very closely mirrors the eligibility criteria for Reinvestment Fund. So you can go to that website, type in your address, or maybe if you don't exactly know the exact address just yet, you could type in the city and take a look and see, is it eligible based on Reinvestment Fund's criteria? If it is, then it would be eligible for this program. If you go to that website, type in the address, and it's not eligible based on their eligibility map, send us an email because we may have additional criteria that we can look at to see if it would be eligible for the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. So I recommend taking a look at that first before going through the process of submitting a whole application. Make sure you're eligible first. And we can talk about that more later if there are further questions on that. So what are some eligible uses of funds for this grant program? Again, we're talking about those soft costs that need to happen in the initial stage of a project. Planning, pre-development, pre-operating activities. We expect that the vast majority of people applying will be working with a technical assistance provider to complete these activities. So a technical assistance provider could be a lawyer, it could be a consultant, it could be an architect, somebody who has that specialized expertise that you need to move the project forward. Examples of eligible uses of funds include community engagement. Maybe you need to work with a facilitator to do some town halls. Maybe you need to do some market research to decide, where could this project be located, or what is the sales potential of this area. You might need business planning assistance. You might need various consulting services, architectural or design assistance, legal counsel. There are a lot of other potential other soft costs that you might be needing. This is just to give you an idea of what could be funded. Things that we will not fund through this program includes, again, those charitable entities like food banks or food pantries, nutrition education, research, restaurants. Food production would not be eligible under this grant program, and that is kind of related to some of the guidelines that we have from our funder, the Reinvestment Fund. Construction, renovation, equipment, land or building acquisition, operating capital. So again, we're talking about groceries at the retail level, and we're not talking about that physical infrastructure. We're talking about those pre-development soft costs. One other note here at the bottom of the slide, this is not a complete list. We will make sure that any activity or any item in the budget, we'll make sure that it is allowable according to federal regulations, since the primary funder is USDA. So USDA funds the program, Reinvestment Fund administers it, and then we get to administer it on a state level. So the timeline for this program, we will have 2 application rounds in 2025. The first round deadline is April 27th by 11:59 p.m. We'll have another round, and that deadline is September 28th at 11:59 p.m. And so we will, grant reviewers will look at the applications and score them, and then applicants will be notified of their award status about 6 weeks after the application round closes. And for projects that are not successful in one round, you can resubmit in a future round. We do have some requirements that we want to make sure grant recipients are aware of. This is, again, all outlined in the guidelines, but we'll need a final budget. We'll need invoices, W-9s, bank account information, the signed grant agreement, just any other materials that we may need. This is just, this is the primary list, though, of things that we would need from you. And then after the project is completed, we need to collect metrics as well. We'll do a follow-up survey and need to have some responses on things like, how did this project go? What did you accomplish? That kind of thing. And again, I want to just make it clear as well that if you're working with a technical assistance provider, and we expect that the majority of people will be, that if you're working with them, we would pay them directly for the services that they provide. So all of the application questions must be answered online, and we've got the link here where you can submit that application. But before submitting that application, you can take a look at all of the questions in the program guidelines. And I highly recommend taking a look at all of those application questions and answering those questions in another document first. So a Word document or a Google Doc or something like that, where you can draft your responses, edit them, and then just copy and paste them into the application form. That's going to be the easiest way for you to do that. Here's just a list of the application questions, kind of the breakdown. We'll start with just some basic information about the applicant, some basic information about the project. And then we will ask you to provide just a short answer a short summary of these questions related to the project overview. So what is it that you hope to accomplish? What work has been done already? Describe how you use KHFI funds. We'll ask for an applicant overview. So a history of the entity, if it's an existing business already, how long has it been in operation? What community partners do you have? Talk about the applicant's ability to carry out this project, kind of provide the track record of the applicant here. Then we'll ask for a description of the community to be served. So we will want to know things about the demographics of the community. You can talk about any challenges or existing challenges with food access for this community. If the community will be involved in any stage of the project, you can talk about that here. And then the project objectives is where you can go into some more detail about the exact planning and pre-development activities that you want to undertake. So talk about why it's necessary, how those activities will advance healthy food access, talk about the technical assistance provider that you want to work with. So again, your application would score higher if you've already identified that person or that firm or whatever it may be. Talk about the exact activities that you want to undertake and be as specific as you can here. Then talk about the project partners. So if you have anyone in the community that you've worked with on this project, economic developers, city officials, if you have partnerships with other local organizations or other foundations, talk about that here as well. In the online application form, there will be a place for you to provide a pretty basic budget. So you can talk about each activity that you want to do, the cost of each activity, and provide a justification. So if you have already gotten a quote from a firm for services, that would be ideal, and you can share that in the online application. For the project timeline, talk about, the start date and end date for your various activities that you want to complete. And then there will also be space for additional documentation. So if you have received a quote, you can upload it. If you have letters of support, maybe a local organization who can talk about the need for this program or the applicant's ability to carry out this work, those types of things would be good to include as well. So that kind of takes us through all of the guidelines. And yeah, at this point, we can take your questions. If we're unable to answer any of your questions today, we will make sure to send follow-up emails and also provide a link to frequently asked questions on our website as well. So I'll stop sharing and we can see what questions folks have.
Yep. We have a couple in the chat, Erica. So the first one is it only for locations in Kansas?
Yes, it is only for locations that will be based in Kansas.
And then there's one, will you provide review feedback for those projects not funded?
I think so. I think that may be something that our team needs to talk about and just verify, but I think that that is part of the plan. So we'll follow up with that to confirm that.
I see Kirk has their hand raised. Kirk, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. First off, Erica and team, my name's Kirk. Y'all helped us do a rural grocery initiative survey like 2 years ago in the Ogden area. So y'all were always great to work with. my question, a follow on to what that work we did 2 years ago was looking at, for instance, a local company, basically a Dollar General, that did not offer fresh offerings. Can we use this funding to kind of keep that process going, or is that too capitalistic, I guess?
Yeah. I think that might be another one that we need to talk about as a team, Kirk. That's a good question, and I'm not sure I have the answer right now.
No worries, no worries. Like I said, that's why I wanted to ask it, because I know,
Yeah.
there are some of our more rural communities that may have a store there already, to where, hopefully the fresh offerings can be bolted on to some other type of retail establishment. And then,
Yeah.
can this be used to, finance a possible plan and a study to see about that? So,
Mhm.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, a study, yes, would be considered eligible, but as you say, is it, if it's not like a locally owned business, if it's, as you say, like a dollar store, for instance, would that qualify? So I think we need to take a look at that.
All right, cool. Thank you.
If I might add something, the idea with these pre-development technical assistance grants is that a project could complete a market study or a feasibility study, and that would help them be in a better position to then access the loan grant mix. That has been our bread and butter, so to speak, for the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative. And the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative Loan Grant Mix Program does have a community fit component, which has been in our eligibility process, which has typically been our way of sussing out whether it is a project that is integrated into community needs or not. And so I think that is where we can address some of those questions. And we would want to be sure that the project is really meeting the needs of the community and engaged with the work that, for example, Kirk and your team have been doing to figure out what would be a good solution in Ogden. So yeah, I think we can also follow up on any additional detail on that question. But I think the idea of a feasibility study seems appropriate to me, especially since a feasibility study may not be specific to one style of store. It's just showing what market is there to support a store.
Thank you.
Then we have a couple of questions in the chat again. If they are awarded funding in round 1, can they apply for further funding in round 2?
Right now, we are only allowing one award per project for this first year. Since we're not exactly sure what the volume of applications will be quite yet. That could change in future years though. So as I said, we'll have funding in 2025, 2026, and 2027. So as of right now, there would be nothing stopping an applicant from applying in a future year, but we will, yeah, just do one award per project in 2025.
And will they have access to the scoring rubric?
We are not providing access to the scoring rubric, but you are able to see what points are available for each question in the application. And I would just encourage you to make sure you're answering every single point. Thoroughly read the description and make sure you're addressing every single sentence in each question.
I'll jump in with a question on types of projects that might be eligible. So just to kind of dig into what we consider healthy food retail, are restaurants typically considered part of the healthy food retail landscape? Would a food hub be something that could apply? Are there any other types of entities that are non-starters for this program?
Yeah, so food pantries are not eligible. Restaurants are not eligible. Something like a convenience store could be eligible. It's a retail business and it may offer healthy food at that, fresh, healthy food at that business. So if it's an existing business and it's trying to get more grocery items into that business, then that would be eligible. But Ryle, if you have other examples to share, feel free to jump in.
The other example would be, would a food hub be an option for this?
Oh, sure. Yes, a food hub could be an option for this. So, that's where there's a centralized location and farmers are bringing their products together to aggregate and distribute their products. That makes it easier to get those healthy food products into retail outlets. So even though the food hub itself may have just wholesale customers like a grocery store, it would still be eligible because ultimately that food is getting into a retail outlet. If the food hub was only selling to a restaurants or schools or something like that, then it would not be eligible. We need to make sure that the food hub is selling to places like grocery stores, if that makes sense.
There's another question in the chat. So a food hub is like a grain co-op or elevator, but for food, not grain, is the question.
Pretty much. That's pretty much right, Kirk. So your fruits and vegetables are coming into a central location and then going out from there. That's kind of what we're talking about there with the food hub. Well, we did schedule an hour, but we don't have to take the whole hour. We just wanted to give a chance for folks who are interested in the program to ask their questions live. And if you do have additional questions, you're always welcome to email them, khfi@case-state.edu. We can put that email address in the chat. Were there any
there is another
Okay.
question in the chat. Sorry, Erica. It just came in. Would the food hub have to serve underserved communities or low resource communities?
Yeah, so let's say, yeah, it's a food hub and they're selling to grocery stores across the region. We would want to know what is the location of those grocery stores that they're selling to. So then we can determine, are those grocery stores in low resource and underserved areas? So wherever that ultimate retail outlet is, we want to know the location of that retail outlet or those, several retail outlets so that we can check the eligibility on that. That would be the same for like a distribution company. They have 10 grocers that they sell to. What are the locations? And they do need to be underserved, low resource communities. All right. Well, we will be sure to post the recording of this informational webinar on our website. For those who had questions and we needed to touch base with our team, we will get back to you. We can also share the answers on our website as well in a frequently asked questions document. But like I said, if any other questions come up, please feel free to send us an email. And yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing what projects you all have in mind. So thanks so much for joining today. Take care.
Thank you.